Welcome to the After Sunday podcast at First Baptist Cocoa, where we are a multi-generational family on mission. I am your host, Gaston Kinney. I am the Associate Pastor of Youth and Administration here at First Baptist. The purpose of this podcast is to dig deeper into subjects that might not make it into a Sunday morning service. Last time we were together, we responded to one of our church members' questions about Reformed theology and dispensational theology. Today, we have a special guest here with us because Pastor Dean is out of town for his brother's graduation. That being said, I am here with our worship pastor, Reverend Larry Martin. So, Pastor Larry, tell us about yourself, how you got here, and your philosophy of worship.
I sure will. Thank you, Gaston. I appreciate it. Good to be with you guys on the podcast today. We miss Pastor Dean as he's out of town for his brother's graduation, but I'm glad to be here. I've been at First Baptist Cocoa for about 3.5 years. I'd kind of gone into semi-retirement and decided pretty quickly that I just wasn't going to get any better at golf, so I might as well go back to work. No, really, I missed ministry and had this opportunity brought to me and just jumped at it and have really, really enjoyed my time here at First Baptist Cocoa. It's a situation where the church is growing and Pastor Dean is preaching the word, and I have tremendous freedom in worship and the music that I select and the folks that I work with. It has really, really been a blessing, and I'm really enjoying it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, so tell us about a little bit more just about yourself, maybe even some of the experience you've had. I know you've done some really cool plays. If you ever go into your office, Pastor Larry, there's pictures of people that I would never even think of being able to meet. So just give us some of those kind of stories of your experience and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, probably since I'm so much older than you, most of the pictures are people who have already died. But no, I'm just kidding. They're not. Some of them have, I'm sure. But that's from some churches that my wife and I have worked in. I went full-time in worship ministry in 1982 and have been full-time ever since then, working in churches. And there was time especially during the 80s and 90s, where churches were doing big productions. There were still lots of choirs in churches. Church music and worship music has changed significantly over the last 20 or 30 years. But back when we had the big choirs, and for those of you listening, if you're a choir person, we'd love to have you in the choir here at First Baptist. We still have a choir, and we do some contemporary stuff as well. But we enjoy worshiping the Lord in whatever possible way we can do it. But when we had those choirs, we did a living Christmas tree at one of the churches we were at, where we'd have about 120 choir folks up on this big structure of a Christmas tree that had a couple 100,000 lights on it. And we would pack the house with folks coming through and hearing the story of the Christ child. And I guess for, 8 or 10 years at 3 different places, we did our Passion Play at Easter. Again, it was something that was kind of fueled by a big choir, and there were lots of drama parts in it, lots of sets. It was kind of a musical telling of the story of the Passion Week of Jesus, from the time that he had the Last Supper and was arrested till the time that he was resurrected after his crucifixion. And last church we were in, we would do that for Friday, Saturday night, Sunday afternoon of 2 different weekends, and pack the house for 6 performances of it. And it was about a 1,500-seat auditorium. I don't know that I've ever done the math on that, but thousands of people would come through and hear the story of Jesus. And as we would sing it, there was a narrator, there were parts and that different ones would do. So it was a really great ministry. Folks, a great outreach to our community as we did those big Passion Play type sets. And I've enjoyed speaking in conferences and doing revivals, as well as being in the local church ministry over the years. It's just one of those things where I think it was somebody like Walt Disney, who said, "Find out what your passion is, and you'll never have to work a day in your life." And that is still the way I feel. I just enjoy what I'm doing, and I don't have any desire to stop doing. And I love the Lord, and I love His church, and love leading folks in praise and worship. And we have such a wonderful bunch here at First Baptist.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Pastor Larry, one of the things here at First Baptist, so our mission statement is we are a multi-generational family on mission. So the beautiful thing about our church is what we try to do and what you do is you incorporate a lot of the old hymns, but also some of the old stuff. And so for somebody like me, and me and you have talked about this in previous conversations, but one of my favorite artists was David Crowder when I was in youth group. And I know you've had conversations with him and stuff. So I guess just tell us a little bit about your philosophy of worship, of trying to combine some of the hymns with some of the newer stuff, and just kind of what that looks like and how your philosophy of worship goes in with our church's mission statement.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about First Baptist Cocoa. Pastor Dean has a real vision for reaching the whole family, not just a segment of it. There are churches, a church gave us a call one time that was in a certain community in Florida, and the churches in this community didn't allow any children in their churches. It was just for senior adults, which I thought was kind of odd, but we obviously didn't end up going there. And there's a lot of churches that seems that they just reach young people, but we have a vision here for reaching all age groups, and we try and have our worship music reflect that. Sometimes we'll do hymns, but we try to do them in a way that's not set in stone as an old traditional way, but kind of update them a little bit. And we do some more contemporary music as well. In the church, people don't, part of my philosophy is that you try to be, as the Apostle Paul said, all things to all men, but you want to make sure that you stay true to what the Lord has for you and for your church. Most people don't think about it, but a lot of the stuff that we have in church, we have inherited from the world, and we just kind of churchyized it. I don't know if that's a word or not, but I guess it is. I just said it. The choir, people don't think about, well, where'd the choir come from? When the world was enamored with entertainment like grand opera 200 and 300 years ago, that's really when, through the opera chorus, that's when choirs developed and evolved. And it wasn't long until churches were using that mode of musical style to worship the Lord in churches. And it's like with many churches today still do have gospel quartets that sing. But most people don't realize that was just an outgrowth of musical theater of the day back when they had barbershop quartets, and that became very, very popular. And the church, a few decades later, started borrowing from it. And even today's praise and worship bands, if you'll go back 20 or 30, 40 years, you'll hear guys like James Taylor and Eric Clapton doing music that's very similar to the style of praise and worship that many churches do today, and even bands like the Eagles and Air Supply and some of the kind of softer style bands. That's what many of the bands in churches are formed after. And I don't have a problem with that, as long as the message remains clear, as long as the songs that we sing are in harmony with Scripture and the music doesn't overshadow the message, which is, that's a common problem with lots of things within the church and within our lives as Christians. The Lord gifts everyone. They have certain things that they can do, and unfortunately, broad is the way, and most people in the world go the broad way, not the narrow way. But lots of people have musical talent, and they choose to use it for themselves or for the world rather than for the Lord. And we're just encouraging people to use their talents for the Lord. And just a big part of my philosophy of ministry is that if we're not careful, we can almost make idols out of musical style, for instance. The thing that makes something an idol is when it becomes more important to us than God is. I see folks all the time who say, well, if they're going to have, a hip band and everything is the way I really enjoy it, then I'll go there to church sometimes without much regard for doctrinal stances that a church may take. And I think that, I'm not saying that that's idolatry, but it kind of borders on it. It's really kind of not keeping the main thing, and the main thing is Jesus, not keeping that the main thing. Their most important thing is becoming whatever the musical style is. And we try not to emphasize the musical style as much as we do the message of what our music is saying.
Yeah, absolutely. So on that, Pastor Larry, tell us, what does worship mean to you?
Worship is just giving that primary part of our lives over to the Lord in every aspect of our lives. Music is just one vehicle that we can worship the Lord with. We see examples of people in the sports world, for instance. They will use their platform as a sports celebrity in order to maybe they'll be able to give their testimony to millions, whereas they would not have been able to otherwise. They can use that physical ability that they have to worship the Lord. It's just a matter of recognizing that from the time we get up in the morning to the time we go to bed at night, just all that happens in our lives needs to be centered around the Lord Jesus, and that needs to be our response. Central is how the Lord would have us to react to something, how he would have us. And I know that almost sounds kind of pious, because you can't go around in this holier than thou state. That's not what I'm talking about. But I am talking about just your real relationship with the Lord needs to be such that when that person cuts you off in traffic, try to respond in the way that the Lord would have you to, rather than the way that you may be tempted to respond. So my philosophy of worship is just to make sure that we put Jesus first in all and everything that we do.
Absolutely. And I think you do a great job with that personally.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
I love the hymns. I love the other more contemporary songs that you put in, and all of those things usually go together with the sermon and what Pastor Dean or anybody else that comes to preach, like myself or Pastor Rick, or it all goes together, which I think is very important.
Yeah.
So, Pastor Larry, last question for you. So, what do you see as a widespread problem in the American church regarding worship? How would you go about to try and help with our listeners with this issue?
Well, it's it probably wouldn't involve music specifically, except the style, the musical style problem has been too front and center for too long, and we're very crippled as to what we can do many times in worship because of that style issue. For instance, First Baptist Cocoa is a Southern Baptist church, and that works good because most evangelical churches in our city and across the land would relate very well to how Southern Baptist churches do things, and we might differ on some doctrinal issues, but pretty much the same format of coming together and worshiping. And yet, if we'll look a little more closely at it, we'll realize that of 45,000 plus Southern Baptist churches in America, the average length of service for a guy in my position, the worship leader, 45,000 churches across America, the average length of service is 18 months. And the reason for that short tenure is because of part of it is musical style. You can't keep everybody happy, of course, but in many cases, it's hard to keep anybody happy. That's one of the things I love about what we do at First Cocoa. We try to have a variety of musical styles that we draw from, but it's very important to remember that musical style is just a vehicle. just like going from here over. I told a Sunday school class recently, if we agreed to go over to Widow Smith's house and mow her grass and take care of everything outside for her, and we had 5 or 6 guys from the class going over, what if she called and said, well, I don't have very wide streets in my neighborhood, so could you just bring one vehicle, maybe the church van, and we'd ride over, we're all going to ride over on the church van. And then I would have people starting to drop out and say, well, my dad was going to let me ride his new motorcycle over there since I was doing such a good deed. And I that's the reason I was coming. I don't really want to ride on that junky old church van. And Brother Gaston said that he would let me ride with him in his new Corvette. So if I just have to ride in the old church van, I'm not going to go. Those guys are missing the point. The service, the worship unto the Lord is working and helping Widow Smith with her yard. The vehicle that we use to get there is really irrelevant. It doesn't really even matter whether we're using musical style like opera or James Taylor or a choir or a acoustic guitar band. Those things we enjoy those things, but the worship's really not for us, it's for the Lord. And we have to remember that if we're going to just quibble back and forth to the point where a person can only stay for a year or so in a church, he's not going to be able to build very much during that 18 months. And so it really stunts the growth of what the worship and music at a church should be. So we need to get past some of those vehicle questions and disagreements and realize the real thing is worshiping the Lord.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Pastor Larry, for filling in and coming and just giving us your, who you are, what you're about, thoughts on worship, and how you go about leading the worship service here at First Baptist. And so we're just so thankful for you joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
But we just want to thank you so much for listening to the After Sunday podcast. Please like and subscribe to this channel. Also, if you really enjoy this podcast, please hit the share button so that other people can hear it. If you have any topics that you would like for us to talk about, please comment on this video as well. Until next time, we pray that the Lord would give you a spirit of wisdom and of revelation and the knowledge of Him.